Political tension within Poland remains high over the issue of the SAFE programme, which would see Poland take out its largest loan in history to invest in the military. Donald Tusk and his government coalition are enthusiastically trying to implement the idea, although President Nawrocki, who is aligned with the government's opposition, is hesitant. Nawrocki's hesitancy is due to a few factors, including the fact that the list of recipients of the money is being hidden, as well as the fact that the EU would have the legal right to freeze the money Poland borrowed if it were to judge that Poland was going against broadly conceived European values. Now, in the midst of all this, Sweden has just announced it won't be borrowing any money under the SAFE programme. Sweden is withdrawing from the SAFE programme. The reason, quite simply, this loan is not worthwhile. In an interview with Rzeczpospolita, the Swedish Minister of Defence, Pål Jonson, explained the reasoning behind this decision. We are not participating in this programme not because it is bad, but because, with the third lowest debt in the European Union, we can borrow on international markets on terms more favourable than the EU itself. But we are also borrowing for the modernisation of our armed forces, €30 billion by 2035. However, Poland cannot count on such attractive credit terms, which is why Prime Minister Tusk and his government, along with all Polish media favourable to it, are trying to convince Polish citizens to support taking out the largest loan in Polish history. SAFE is a big deal. There is €150 billion at stake. Poland is set to borrow almost a third of that amount, totalling over €40 billion. Should the loan go through, lobbyists and pundits who promoted the programme to the public would profit generously.
W przypadku takich kontraktów wartość budżetu.
In the case of such contracts, the budget for lobbyists for the entire process leading to the conclusion of the contract is between 2 and 5%. This means several billion zloty, maybe even a dozen or so, will go to all the people, the media, experts, specialists, generals and retired generals. It's expensive because the work is thankless and difficult. Poles remember how, in 2023, the money from the EU's post-COVID recovery fund that was supposed to go to Poland was frozen until Poland's right-wing government was replaced by one more friendly to the EU, led by Donald Tusk. Thus, naturally, Polish public opinion views the idea of borrowing massive sums from the EU with a high degree of scepticism. An SW research poll for Rzeczpospolita shows that over 38% of Poles fear that this programme actually serves German rather than Polish interests. It also turns out that young people are the most sceptical about who will benefit from the loan, as many as 43% of Poles aged 25 to 34 and 42% of those aged 35 to 49.
To oznacza, że jest potężny problem.
This means that there is a huge problem for Donald Tusk's government. Poles see that there are many doubts surrounding the programme which may be crucial in a situation where Russia is waging a war of aggression just beyond our eastern border. And instead of strengthening our security, this type of programme may lead to a situation in which decision makers in Berlin and Paris can blackmail us financially with zero recourse. However, despite the concerns of Poles, on February the 19th, the Senate, controlled by Tusk's coalition, passed the bill implementing the SAFE programme with only 3 cosmetic amendments. Now the bill will go back to the Parliament and then the desk of President Karol Nawrocki, and this is where Tusk's mouthpieces turn up their verbal pressure to 11. What would President Nawrocki, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, do? There are no shades of grey here. Either he signs a bill for Poland's security or he commits treason. All those who want to block this programme, who want to protest, are acting against Poland's interests, against the most important issue, which is the security of Poland and the entire continent. So stop it. President, sign it. There is no need to delay and discuss. Where does this pressure come from? It may not only be about passing the bill, but above all about shifting responsibility for future ill consequences of the SAFE loan onto President Nawrocki. The ruling coalition really wants the president to sign the SAFE bill, realising that some really unpleasant things may happen, and wants Nawrocki to share at least some of the responsibility, including those related to corruption. Opposition politicians have just submitted a request to the Central Anti-Corruption Bureau demanding clarification of doubts surrounding €2 billion, which, according to the media, are to be transferred to the account of Polska Amunicja, a company headed by Paweł Ponsiliusz from the Civic Coalition, Tusk's own party, after the implementation of the SAFE programme. It is a Polish loan from Polish taxpayers' money which will be repaid by us, our children and our grandchildren. And even before the official list is even announced, we have already found irregularities. Tusk, however, remains outwardly adamant that Polish citizens should support SAFE. We're in Stalowa Wola, which has been in the news a lot recently. Party members were brought here. They raised a hue and cry protesting against the large sums of money that are to go to this steelworks, as well as to other arms industry plants in Poland. The outcry is that the money is going to the Germans. I will try to explain this as simply as I can. Watch my lips. 20 billion just for this steelworks. Stalowa Wola, Podkarpacia, Poland. Got it, thickhead? All the while, the doubts about the SAFE program remain. The bill will likely find itself on President Nawrocki's desk in the coming days. What will happen after that? One may only speculate.
On February 26th in Geneva, Iran and the United States will hold a third round of negotiations. According to the New York Times, Thursday's talks are to be a final attempt to avoid armed conflict. The Trump administration is simultaneously planning measures in case the talks fail. Whether it will be a pinpoint strike or a massive attack that will end the Ayatollah's rule, reports are contradictory for now. But it is clear the US president is slowly losing his patience. Representatives of the United States and Iran met this week in Switzerland and said progress had been made in talks aimed at curbing Iran's nuclear program. Despite these reports, Donald Trump later said the world would find out in the coming days whether an agreement with Iran would be reached or whether the United States would take military action.
The president asked me that this morning, and I don't want to use the word frustrated. It's almost because he understands he's got plenty of alternatives. But it's curious. He's curious as to why they haven't, I don't want to use the word capitulated, but why they haven't capitulated. Why under this sort of pressure, with the amount of sea power, naval power that we have over there, why they haven't come to us and said, we profess that we don't want a weapon, so here's what we're prepared to do, and yet it's hard to sort of get them to that place.
Many key issues still divide the two sides. Washington speaks of gaps to be filled, while Tehran insists it will not give up its nuclear program, although it declares its willingness to have it be reviewed.
From the American side, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff says that zero enrichment remains on the table. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has said that Iran must be able to enrich some level of uranium. So it does seem like there's pretty big gaps still. So these talks in Geneva might be key in determining whether or not all this military force assembled in the Middle East is used against Iran.
Meanwhile, a spokesman for the Iranian Foreign Ministry said that putting pressure on Iran to unconditionally accept the U.S. demands would certainly not bring results. We are currently in the process of formulating our positions and hope that within the next 2 or 3 days, we will be able to hold another round of talks. But any negotiations aimed at forcing one side to accept the demands of the other are naturally doomed to failure. Iran itself is in turmoil again. Students at several Iranian universities have organized anti-government protests, the first demonstrations on such a scale since the mass protests in January, which were brutally suppressed by the authorities. Demonstrations and rallies took place at least 3 universities in the capital, Tehran, and 1 in the northeast of the country. Students paid tribute to the thousands of victims killed in the mass protest in January. Young people chanted, "Death to the dictator," referring to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The United States has assembled the largest number of aircraft and warships in the Middle East since the invasion of Iraq in 2003. This is part of President Donald Trump's tough diplomacy, aimed at forcing Iran to agree to abandon its nuclear program. Trump warned that something really bad will happen if no agreement is reached.
Armed like a military unit, wearing bulletproof vests and carrying heavy weapons, this is what the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, considered to be one of the most militarized and dangerous criminal organizations in the world, looks like. Its leader, Nemesio Oseguera, known as El Mencho, was killed in an operation by the Mexican army, supported by intelligence from the United States. According to the authorities, the operation was carried out jointly by the Army and the National Guard in the state of Jalisco. The news of the cartel leader's death almost immediately provoked reaction from his men in various parts of the country. I would like to emphasize that the National Coordinated Headquarters is operating around the clock. Ministers and their teams, as well as the Ministry of Internal Affairs, are participating in it in order to maintain constant cooperation with all state authorities. This headquarters was established yesterday after the operation, and I would like to thank all the governors because they all remained in close coordination and exchanged information. Normal life has been paralyzed in many regions of the country. Armed men began blocking roads and with burning trucks, buses and cars, and there were arson attacks on stores and infrastructure. For years, the cartel has been using the tactic of so-called narco-blockades, coordinated vehicle fires and road closures in multiple locations simultaneously to paralyze the activities of the authorities and cause chaos. Operations were suspended at some airports in the region, and passengers waited hours for information about their flights. Security services increased their presence in terminals, fearing further escalation of violence. The situation is particularly tense in Guarda Alayara, and there was an attempt to storm the airport and the tourist resort of Puerto Vallarta, where the cartel attacked several hotels. Local authorities appealed to the public to limit their movements and stay at home. We are very afraid. We only go out when necessary because people don't know if they should go out at all and what to do. The authorities have introduced emergency security procedures and increased the presence of security forces. Special army units have been deployed to many areas. We have gotten through the critical hours responding to incidents in different parts of the state and the metropolitan area. Coordination between the various services at all levels of the government has been crucial. The main objective is to ensure the safety of the population. That is why, early this morning, during this security meeting, which remains in constant mode, we activated a code red, which is still in effect. In recent years, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel has grown into one of the two most powerful criminal organizations in the country, alongside the Sinaloa cartel, known from the days of El Chapo. Experts emphasize that from the beginning, the CJNG has developed structures resembling a paramilitary formation, with heavy weapons, armored vehicles, and trained troops at its disposal. At the moment, various sectors of public opinion, business people, the Catholic hierarchy in the United States will view Claudia Sheinbaum's government positively. However, I'm not sure that the majority of the population, which is suffering from roadblocks set up by drug cartels, bus hijackings, panic spread on social media, and arson attacks on stores across the country, will accept or support this attempted arrest, which ended with the killing of El Mencho. The organization controlled key drug trafficking routes to the United States, including fentanyl, cocaine, and methamphetamine. For years, U.S. authorities have considered its leader one of the most dangerous drug traffickers in the world and offered a multi-million-dollar reward for his capture. Their involvement in the operation at the intelligence level is of great importance for the safety of American citizens in Mexico. Due to ongoing security operations in multiple states and related road blockages and criminal activity, U.S. citizens should shelter in a place in named locations until further notice. Actions to take: beware of your surroundings. Avoid areas around law enforcement activity. Seek shelter and minimize unnecessary movements. Monitor local media for updates. Follow the directions of local authorities and in case of emergency, call 911. Avoid crowds. Keep family and friends advised of your location and well-being via phone, text, and social media. Analysts are comparing the effects of this operation to the arrest of El Chapo over a decade ago and are warning of a possible leadership struggle within the cartel. Mexican authorities are announcing further action against criminal organizations, but the threat level remains high in many regions of the country. That is why the embassies of most countries in Mexico warn against traveling to the country and instruct citizens already on its territory to comply strictly with announcements and orders from state authorities.